Hey everybody, my name is Abraham Studer, and the movie I picked is Chan is Missing. The movie is directed by Wayne Wang. It is written by Isaac Koren, Tyler Seltzer, and Wayne Wang. It was released on April 24th, 1982. In it is starring Wood Moy as Joe and Mark Hayashi as Steve. Originally, it was distributed by New Yorker Films, and in it, it uses the languages of English, Mandarin, and Cantonese. This was an independent movie with a budget of $22,000. In the plot, we follow Joe and Steve, who are uncle and son, both aspiring taxi drivers in the San Francisco Chinatown area. Throughout the movie, they search for their missing friend Chan, who disappeared after they gave him $4,000 for licenses, whom we learn more and more about as the investigation continues. The two men search for Chan by speaking with various Chinatown locals, each of whom have a different impression of Chan's personality and motivations. The portrait that is created is incomplete and at times contradictory. As the film progresses, we can see that Chan is a symbolic representation of the Chinese American community, formed by the different ideas and thoughts that Joe and Steve discover along their journey. To understand the concept of identity that is used throughout the movie, there's a clip that I tried to show of Joe interviewing a teacher from one of the immersion schools in San Francisco. In the interview, the teacher talks about the political uprisings, you could call it, both back in Hong Kong and the demonstrations that are now in America during a festival that he suggests as the New Year's parade. If you'd like to watch the video, I encourage it. It's actually very interesting and gives an insight on these sort of ideas that residents in San Francisco and Chinatown had. It's also very relevant throughout the whole movie, as it enforces the idea of confusion that the movie has around Joe's information gathering process about his friend Chan. The film was shot in black and white, which was also plotted in a mystery with noir undertones, aka Hollywood crime films from the 1940s and 50s. But along with this, there's almost a comedy undertone where Joe and Steve almost go back and forth with each other about their own personal ideas, and they also kind of joke with the residents around Chinatown. Um, it's not necessarily a very serious movie, although it does tackle a lot of the problems that the people in the area face. The name of the film, as well as the missing character Chan, is a spin-off of the Hawaiian show Charlie Chan, a detective show based around the fictional Chinese immigrant detective in Honolulu, Hawaii. Chan's missing turns the Charlie Chan detective trope on its head by making Chan the missing person that the film's two protagonists, Joe and Steve, search for. The film was made in 1982. Many Americans embraced a new conservatism in social, economic, and political life during the 1980s, characterized by the policies of President Ronald Reagan. Often remembered for its materialism and consumerism, the decade also saw the rise of the yuppie, an explosion of blockbuster movies and emergence of cable networks like MTV, which introduced the music video and launched the careers of many iconic stars. We also saw that by early 1982, the United States was experiencing its worst recession since the Great Depression. 9 million people were unemployed in November of that year. Businesses closed, families lost their homes, and farmers lost their land. In Hong Kong, in which the movie relates, we see British Nationality Act of 1981, which said that renamed all existing British colonies to dependent territories. The renaming did not change how the governments operated, but affected the nationality status of Hong Kong citizens, which is then over 5 million inhabitants, most of whom were to become British dependent territory citizens, a status that could no longer be transmitted by descent. Joining mainland China never is going to be easy, but China suggested a one country, two systems policy, where Hong Kong could potentially retain their own economic systems inside the People's Republic of China. To add to this, there was an influx of immigrants to Hong Kong, which led to public outcries in the early 1980s over decreasing wages due to immigrants raising supply against demand in their country. The film is almost a medium which the spontaneous, confusing, and busy life of the Asian American can be seen through. This is done through the multiple interviews that they have, which range in the topic of conversation, the language they speak, either Mandarin, Cantonese, or English. This helps in showing the aspects of the district that are rarely visible to tourists. In the movie, there is a talk of the political battles between the People's Republic of China, mainland China, and the Republic of China, Taiwan, and whether or not Chan had been involved in the death of an elderly man during a protest. Many people in the Chinatown area began to become more involved in Chinese politics to almost continue their heritage and not become Americanized. This led to public demonstrations, which were even joked about in the movie, when one of the interviewers joked about how New Year's Day has become an excuse to wave their country's opposing flags. Uncle Joe's voice is heard over every cutscene to almost summarize what had happened in the last meeting, and where led the detectives to next. It often resulted in Joe and Steve only getting more confused with the character and understanding less and less of him. This almost encouraged the viewer to understand that even the characters had a hard time following the adventure that they were on. Wang Wang was born 71 years ago in British Hong Kong, but moved to the States when he was 17, as his parents wished for him to study medicine in California. Much to his surprise, he instead switched to arts and began independently producing films such as Chan is Missing, Dim Sum, A Little Bit of Heart, and Eat a Bowl of Tea. During his life, he primarily lived in San Francisco, but he split a little of his time with the house that he and his wife had in New York. Many of his first works, and some later in his career, were based around revealing the complexities beyond the customary themes of alienation and assimilation. As an immigrant himself, and being named after his father's favorite actor John Wayne, Wang was in pole position to help bring light and recognition into the Asian American community. Wang Wang's primary distribution goal was to have the film play at festivals and college campuses originally. And as one of the first Asian American feature films, audience reactions to it spanned a spectrum of responses, sometimes dependent on the ethnicity of the viewer. To quote one Chinese American viewer, the movie was written for a white audience because there's so much explaining, so many footholes. According to Starrett, we see that its initial audience had not been an ethnic one. Chinese viewers were being wooed through newspaper ads. Furthermore, we also see that Asians were wooed to watch the film by the white reviewers who reviewed the movie in the Asian press, therefore raising questions about whom the film was catered to. Peter X. Fang believes the success of this movie was through the art house audiences and brought the Asian American into the theaters. He also states that reviews in the Asian American press often simply advertise the screenings, but the lengthy reviews usually refer to how the white reviewers see Chinese Americans and how Asian American texts are received by non-Asian audiences. Chan is Missing was one of the first Asian American feature films, which paved the way for more to come after Wang, as his humor with the writing and screenplay enabled both Asian Americans and others to find joy in the whirlwind that the protagonist got into. Being able to bridge the gap culturally between different people, as well as giving a closer look into life in the early 80s of the Asian American. This may not have been groundbreaking to the average moviegoer, but attempting to quote-unquote normalize Asian culture and bring it into the mainstream movie listings, all while winning 2 awards and being nominated for another, allowed small producers like Wang to gain credible experience and build a platform in which similar movies could succeed.